Hello everyone, welcome to 6.6, add and subtract fractions. The essential question is, how can you use a common denominator to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators? And we've already talked about what a common denominator is in the previous videos. So if you need to refresh on those definitions, you can go back to like 6.1, 6.2. I'm sure they have the definition in there. But the common denominator is when the lower part of a fraction, this part right here, like the 8 and the 4, is the same. Okay? So the steps, which I need you to write down, are find the common denominator, and whatever factor you multiply each denominator by, you need to multiply your numerators by that same factor. For example, if I multiply the denominator 1/2 by 2, I need to also multiply the numerator by 2, making the new product 2/4. So once again, a quick refresher, if you don't know what a denominator is, or numerator, the 2 would be your denominator. The 1 would be your numerator. So if I multiply something in the denominator, like if I multiply the denominator by 2, I have to also multiply the numerator by 2. Whatever you do the bottom, you got to do the top. Whatever you do the top, you have to do the bottom. Okay? Simple as that. And that would make my new fraction 2/4. Because 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started with the examples. We only have 2 examples. It should be fairly simple today because you already know how to add and subtract fractions. So we're going to do one example on adding fractions and one example on subtracting fractions. So real quick, if you need to write down the steps, pause now. Okay, here are the 2 examples. You can write them down and pause now if you need to. So the first example is 1/4 plus 3/8. So what we're going to do is we need to find a common denominator. Now, you can do this a couple ways. You can multiply the bottom 2, or you could say, hey, does 4 go into 8? Well, I see that 4 does go into 8. It goes in there 2 times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1/4, and I'm going to multiply the numerator and denominator by 2. And that's going to get me 2/8. Now that I have a common denominator, I can add my numerators only. 2/8 plus 3/8 equals 5/8. All right? And that should be the end of that problem. If you were to multiply the denominators, let's say you have 1/4 plus 3/8, and you multiply both and you get 32, because 4 times 8 is 32. Well, you need to do multiply, since you multiplied the 8 by 4, you need to multiply the 3 by 4. And since you multiplied the 4 by 8, you need to multiply the 1 by 8. 1 times 8 is 8, 3 times 4 is 12, and that would get you 20/32. Now this is equal to 5/8. It's just that 5/8 is what we call simplest form, meaning you cannot take away any other fractions from it. You can't divide to make it smaller. That's as small as that fraction will go. With 20/32, we could simplify that. We could take out 4. 20 divided by 4, 32 divided by 4, which would get us 5/8. Okay? But with 5/8, it's in simplest form. There's nothing else that we can do to make it smaller. It's as small as the fraction will go. So if they ask you to put it in simplest form, they're telling you to make it as small as it can possibly go. I'll show you how to do this more in class because it's going to be a step-by-step process. But all it really requires is you seeing, okay, what does the 20 and the 32 have in common? Oh, they both have a 4 in common, so I can divide it by 4 and get it to 5/8. What does 5 and 8 have in common? Well, nothing. You can't divide it by 2 because 5 is a prime number. You can't divide it by 5 either because 8 doesn't go into 5 evenly. So 5/8 is as small as it gets. All right, let's go ahead and let's do the second and last example. And this example is 9/10 minus 2/5. I'm going to move it down so we have room to work. Okay, so 9/10 minus 2/5. So the first thing we need to look at is say, okay, we can either multiply the denominators to find a common denominator, or we can ask, does 10 go into any of the go into 5 at all? No, but does 5 go into 10? Absolutely. I know 5 goes into 10 2 times. So I'm going to take 2 over 5. I'm going to multiply the 2 by 2 and the 5 by 2. And that's going to get me 4 over 10. Now I have a common denominator. I got 9 over 10 minus 4 over 10, which equals 5 over 10. Now, if I was to put this in simplest form, 5 over 10 could be your final answer, but if they ask you to put it in simplest form, it's not simplified because you could still take a number out of both the 5 and the 10. Do you know of any number that you could take out of both 5 and 10? Why don't you take a second, pause, and think about it. Well, I know that since 5 goes into 10, I could take a 5 out of 5 and a 5 out of 10. Doing so, 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Doing so gives me the fraction 1/2. And that is in simplest form. 1/2 is always in simplest form because, actually, just so you know, if the numerator is ever 1, that fraction is in simplest form because 1 is as small as you can get it. You can't take anything out of 1, okay? Evenly like that. So 1/2 would be simplest form, okay? Like I said, if you got 5 over 10 and that's as much as you know, that's okay. We'll talk about putting things in simplest form when we get to class, okay? Please make sure you write everything down. Write down all any questions that you might have, and thank you for watching. That's it.